I was 10 years old when my father locked me out of his mansion and left me to freeze in a blizzard on Christmas Eve. I wasn't wearing shoes. I wasn't wearing a coat. Just my nightgown and the necklace my grandmother gave me before she died. I can still remember the sound of the lock clicking. The way the Christmas lights blurred through my tears. The cold seeping into my bones. My mother watched from the window. She didn't open the door. This is the story of that night, and how I survived the family that was supposed to protect me. People have this fantasy about what it means to grow up rich. They see the mansion, the designer clothes, the exotic vacations. They think, she has everything. And I did have everything. Everything except the one thing that actually matters. My father, Jonathan Pierce, built his empire from nothing. Tech investments in the early 90s, then commercial real estate, then venture capital. By the time I was born in 1988, Forbes valued him at $2.8 billion. We lived in a sprawling estate in the Berkshires. 23 bedrooms. 2 pools, 1 indoor, 1 outdoor. A tennis court. A private lake. Guest houses for the staff. It looked like a fairy tale. It was a prison. See, my father didn't want a daughter. He wanted an asset. A chess piece. Something he could mold and display and leverage for his social standing. My mother, Catherine, came from old money, the kind of family that had been wealthy for so long they'd forgotten how to be human. She married my father for his ambition. He married her for her pedigree. I was the byproduct of a business merger, not a marriage. From the moment I could walk, I was being trained. Piano lessons at 4. French lessons at 5. Etiquette classes, horseback riding, ballroom dancing. I wasn't allowed to play with regular children. Too common. I wasn't allowed to watch cartoons. Too juvenile. I wasn't allowed to be loud, or messy, or emotional. Pierce women don't cry, Arabella, my mother would say, her voice like ice. We endure. My father was worse. Cold. Calculating. He looked at me the way you'd look at a car you're thinking about buying, assessing value, checking for defects. Every report card was a referendum on my worth. Every public appearance was a performance review. I learned to be perfect. Or at least, to pretend to be. But here's the thing about pretending to be perfect. Eventually, you forget what you actually are underneath. I was 10 years old, and I couldn't tell you what my favorite color was. What made me laugh. What I dreamed about at night. I only knew what I was supposed to be. And that Christmas Eve, I learned what happened when I failed. December 24th. My mother had been planning her annual Christmas gala for months. It was the social event of the season. 300 guests. Politicians, tech moguls, celebrities, old money families from Boston and New York. Everyone who was anyone would be there. And I was expected to be the perfect accessory. I'd been fitted for my dress in November. White velvet with pearl buttons. Patent leather shoes that pinched my feet. My hair had been curled that morning by my mother's stylist, tight ringlets that pulled at my scalp. I looked like a porcelain doll. I felt like I couldn't breathe. The party started at 7. I was stationed in the grand foyer with my parents, forced to smile and curtsy as guests arrived. Arabella, darling, you've grown so much. What a well-behaved child. Jonathan, Catherine, she's absolutely precious. I smiled until my face hurt. By 9 o'clock, I'd done my duty. I was dismissed to my room, told to change into my nightgown and stay quiet. But I couldn't sleep. Because my father had promised me something 3 weeks earlier. We'd been in the car, driving back from one of his business dinners. I'd been quiet in the back seat, watching the Christmas lights blur past the window. "Daddy?" I'd asked softly. "Can we do something together this Christmas? Just you and me?" He'd glanced at me in the rearview mirror. "Like what?" "I don't know. Maybe we could watch a movie? Or play a game? Or just talk?" There was a long pause. Then, "Sure, Arabella. Christmas Eve, after the party. I promise." I'd held on to those words like a lifeline for 3 weeks. So at 10 p.m., after I'd changed into my nightgown, I crept downstairs. The party was winding down. Guests were gathering their coats, calling for their cars. I found my father in his study with 4 other men, all of them in tuxedos, cigars in hand, laughing about some deal they'd closed. I knocked quietly on the doorframe. "Daddy?" He didn't even look up. "Not now, Arabella." "But, you promised. You said after the party?" I said not now. One of the men noticed me standing there and smiled. "Jonathan, is this your daughter?" "She's adorable." My father's jaw tightened. She was just leaving. But I didn't leave. I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was 10 years of being invisible. Maybe it was the exhaustion of being perfect. Maybe I was just a kid who wanted her dad. "You promised me," I said, my voice cracking. "You said we'd spend time together. You promised." The room went silent. My father stood up slowly, his face turning to stone. "Gentlemen, excuse me for a moment." He walked toward me, and I instinctively took a step back. He grabbed my arm, his grip tight enough to bruise, and pulled me out into the hallway. "How dare you?" His voice was low, dangerous. "How dare you embarrass me in front of my colleagues? In my own home." "I'm sorry, I don't care what you just. Do you understand what you've done? The impression you've made? These men control billions in capital. They don't want to see a whining child throwing a tantrum." Tears were streaming down my face now. I wasn't throwing a tantrum, I just wanted. "What you want is irrelevant." My mother appeared at the top of the grand staircase, still in her evening gown, a champagne flute in her hand. "Jonathan, what's going on?" "The Vanderbilts are leaving." "Your daughter," he said coldly, "just humiliated me." She looked down at me with the same expression she'd have looking at a stain on her carpet. "Arabella, really? Tonight of all nights?" "I didn't mean to." "Enough," my father snapped. "I'm tired of the excuses. The neediness. The constant demands for attention." He walked to the front door and opened it. Snow was falling thick and heavy. The wind howled through the open doorway. My blood ran cold. "Jonathan?" My mother's voice held a note of uncertainty. "She needs to learn," he said flatly. "She needs to understand that actions have consequences." "Out," he said, looking at me. I thought I'd misheard. "What?" I said, "Get out." "Daddy, it's snowing." "I don't care." "You want my attention? You want to be heard? Fine. Go outside and think about what you've done. Maybe an hour in the cold will teach you some gratitude." My mother set down her champagne glass. "Richard, she's in her nightgown." "Good. Maybe she'll remember this lesson." I looked between them, my whole body shaking. This couldn't be happening. Please, I whispered. I'm sorry. I won't interrupt again, I promise. He grabbed my shoulder and shoved me toward the door. I stumbled onto the front steps. The cold hit me like a wall. I was barefoot. The stone steps were already covered in snow. Daddy, please. He stared down at me, his face completely expressionless. When you're ready to apologize properly, you can come back inside. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, please. The door slammed shut. I heard the deadbolt click. And then, silence. Just the wind and the snow and my own ragged breathing. I stood there on the front steps, hammering on the door with my small fists. Please. Please let me in. No response. Mommy. Daddy. I'm sorry. Nothing. The snow was accumulating fast. It was already up to my ankles. My feet were going numb. I could see lights on inside. Could see shadows moving past the windows. The party was still going. I could hear faint music, laughter. They were just continuing. Like I wasn't freezing to death 20 feet away. After what felt like an eternity, I stopped pounding. My hands were too cold. Too numb. I tried the side entrance. Locked. The kitchen door. Locked. The servants' entrance. Locked. Every single door to that massive house was locked. He'd planned this. That's when the real terror set in. He wasn't coming back in 5 minutes to teach me a lesson. He'd locked every door. He meant this. I looked out at our property. 15 acres of manicured lawns and gardens, now buried under snow. The nearest neighbor was half a mile away through woods. The main road was another quarter-mile past that. I tried to think through the panic. Keep moving. Don't sit down. Don't fall asleep. I remembered something from a school assembly about hypothermia. Those were the rules. So I started walking. Every step was agony. The snow burned my feet like fire, then like nothing at all. I headed toward the staff cottages at the far edge of the property. Maybe someone was still awake. Maybe someone would help. But the path seemed endless. The wind cut through my thin nightgown like it wasn't even there. My whole body was shaking so violently I could barely walk straight. I wrapped my arms around myself, but it didn't help. Nothing helped. I passed the frozen fountain. The garden maze. The greenhouse. All the beautiful things my father's money had bought. None of them could save me now. My vision started to blur. I was so tired. So cold. There was a part of my brain, the rational part, that was screaming at me to keep moving. But my body was shutting down. I made it to the stone wall that bordered the eastern edge of the property. And I couldn't go any further. My legs just gave out. I collapsed into the snow. It felt almost warm now. Soft. I stared up at the sky, watching snowflakes fall. I thought about my grandmother. The one person who'd ever really loved me. She'd died 2 years earlier. I was wearing her necklace, a small silver locket with her picture inside. I closed my fingers around it. I'm sorry, Grandma. I tried to be good. I really tried. My eyes started to close. And I thought, this is it. This is how I die. On Christmas Eve. Because I wanted to spend time with my father. I don't know how long I laid there. Time had stopped meaning anything. But then I heard something. A voice. Distant. Muffled. The hell? Strong hands lifted me up. A weathered face swam into view, a man with kind eyes and gray hair. Jesus Christ, kid. What are you doing out here? I tried to speak, but my jaw wouldn't work. The man, I later learned his name was Thomas, was the property manager. He'd been driving back from his daughter's house when his headlights caught something in the snow. Me. He scooped me up like I weighed nothing and ran to his truck. The heater blasted. He wrapped me in his jacket, rubbing my arms, my hands. Stay with me, sweetheart. Stay awake. Can you tell me your name? Arabella, I managed through chattering teeth. His eyes widened. Arabella? As in Mr. Pierce's daughter? I nodded. Where are your parents? Why are you outside? I pointed weakly toward the main house. His face went from concerned to horrified. They put you out? In this? Another nod. He looked at the mansion in the distance, all lit up like a Christmas card, and I saw something dangerous flash across his face. Those goddamn monsters. He drove to his cottage on the property. His wife, Elena, took one look at me and immediately went into crisis mode. She drew a warm bath, not hot, she kept saying, warm, or it'll hurt worse. She helped me out of my soaked nightgown. That's when they saw the bruises on my arms. From where my father had grabbed me. Elena's eyes filled with tears. They gave me warm clothes, Elena's sweatpants and sweatshirt, rolled up at the ankles and wrists. Thick socks. Blankets. Hot tea with honey. Thomas examined my feet. 3 of my toes had frostbite. My core temperature was dangerously low. We need to take her to a hospital, Elena whispered. And tell them what? Thomas shot back. That her billionaire parents threw her out in a blizzard? Who's going to believe us? People like that, they're untouchable. He was right. And we all knew it. So they kept me there. All night. Elena sat with me, stroking my hair, singing soft Spanish lullabies her own grandmother had sung to her. I fell asleep feeling safer than I'd felt in my entire life. I woke up to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows. For a moment, I didn't remember where I was. Then it all came flooding back. Elena was in the kitchen making breakfast. Thomas was on the phone. We have your daughter, he said, his voice hard. Yes, Arabella. She's safe. I found her half frozen in the snow at 2 a.m. A long pause. Then his face went pale. You want us to keep her a few more hours? Because Mr. Pierce is sleeping? He looked at Elena. She had her hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Ma'am, your daughter almost died last night. I don't think you understand. Click. She'd hung up. Thomas set down the phone very slowly. What kind of people? He couldn't even finish the sentence. Elena came over and wrapped her arms around me. Mi cielo, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't cry. I couldn't. I just felt empty. Thomas finally drove me back to the main house around 1 p.m. on Christmas Day. The party decorations were still up. Champagne glasses still scattered on tables. The house was quiet. My father was in his office. My mother was having brunch in the conservatory with two of her friends. Neither of them came to the door. A maid let me in, her eyes full of pity, and told me to go to my room. I walked past the Christmas tree. All the presents still wrapped underneath. There was nothing with my name on it. There never had been. I went upstairs, changed into clean clothes, and sat on my bed. Around 3 o'clock, my father finally appeared in my doorway. He didn't apologize. He didn't ask if I was okay. He just said, "I trust you've learned your lesson about appropriate behavior." I stared at him. This man who was supposed to protect me. Who'd thrown me away like garbage. "Yes, sir," I whispered. He nodded, satisfied, and walked away. That night, I snuck down to the kitchen and stole a pair of scissors. Back in my room, I took off my grandmother's necklace and cut a small piece of my hair. I put it inside the locket, next to her picture. And I made myself a promise. I will survive this. I will grow up. And I will get out. And when I do, I'll never look back. The thing about trauma is that it doesn't announce itself. It doesn't make you broken in obvious ways. Sometimes it just makes you quiet. After that Christmas Eve, I became a ghost in my own home. I stopped asking for things. Stopped expecting things. I learned to be so perfectly, invisibly obedient that my parents almost forgot I existed. Which was exactly what I wanted. I focused on school. Straight A's, always. Not because I cared about pleasing my father anymore, but because good grades were my ticket out. I spent as much time as I could with Thomas and Elena. They became my real family. Elena taught me to cook. Thomas taught me about cars, about fixing things, about self-reliance. "Your parents have money," he told me once, "but they don't have character." Never confuse the two. When I was 13, my mother enrolled me in an elite boarding school in Massachusetts. "It's time you learned to socialize with the right kind of people," she said. I knew the truth. I was an inconvenience they were shipping off. I didn't care. It meant I only had to see them during holidays. At school, I excelled. I was quiet, studious, unremarkable. I had acquaintances but no real friends. I'd learned not to get close to people. Everyone leaves eventually. Everyone disappoints you. Better to be alone. But I also started doing something else. I started volunteering at a women's shelter near the school. At first, it was just to pad my college applications. But then I met the women there. Women who'd escaped abusive husbands, abusive families. Women who'd lost everything but kept fighting. They saw something in me, some kind of kinship. "You've got that look," one woman told me. She was maybe 35 but looked 50. The survivor look. "You're running from something too, aren't you, honey?" I didn't answer. But she knew. They all knew. When I was 17, my father had a business scandal. Some shady real estate deal that went public. There were investigations, lawsuits, his face all over the news. The Pierce family empire was crumbling. My mother handled it the way she handled everything, by pretending it wasn't happening and drinking more wine. But my father, he got meaner. I came home for Christmas break my senior year. The house was different. Half the staff had been let go. The decorations were minimal. My mother barely spoke. She drifted through the house like a ghost. My father spent all his time in his office, screaming into phones, throwing things. I tried to stay out of the way. But on Christmas Eve, exactly 7 years after that night in the snow, he called me into his office. "I need you to do something for me," he said without preamble. "Okay. There's a merger I'm trying to salvage. The CEO has a son. Yale graduate, 25, works in finance." My stomach dropped. "I need you to meet him. Be charming. He's expressed interest in you." "I'm 17. You'll be 18 in 2 months. That's old enough." "Dad, I'm not. This isn't a request, Arabella." His voice was ice. "This family is on the brink. You're going to do your part." "My part? You want me to what, marry some stranger to save your business deal?" "If necessary, yes." I stared at him. 7 years ago, he'd thrown me into a blizzard. And he'd learned nothing. "No," I said quietly. "Excuse me?" I said no. "I'm not doing it." His face turned purple. "You ungrateful little, do you have any idea what I've given you? The life you've lived?" "You've given me nothing," I said, my voice steady now. "You've never loved me. You've never even liked me. I'm just another asset to you. Another thing you can use and throw away when it's not useful anymore." He stood up, and for a second, I thought he might hit me. But I didn't flinch. I wasn't 10 anymore. "Get out of my house," he said. "Gladly." I went upstairs, packed a bag, and left. I walked to Thomas and Elena's cottage. They took me in without question. I never went back. I graduated high school while living with Thomas and Elena. My father refused to pay for college. Cut me off completely. Fine by me. I got a full scholarship to a state school. Worked 3 jobs to cover living expenses. It was the freest I'd ever been. I studied social work, psychology, everything I could learn about trauma, about healing, about breaking cycles. I went to therapy. Finally. My therapist, Dr. Miranda Chen, was the first person I told the whole story to. About the snow. The years of coldness. The fear. The emptiness. "You know what you are," she said one day. "Broken?" "No. A survivor." I started to cry. First time in years. In college, I met people who actually cared about me. Real friends. People who chose me, not because of my name or my father's money, but because of me. I met my best friend, Jade, in a women's studies class. She was everything I wasn't: loud, fearless, unapologetically herself. She was the first person I told about that Christmas Eve. "Bella," she said. She'd started calling me Bella instead of Arabella, said it suited me better. "You know that's not normal, right? What they did to you." "I know. Like, that's criminal. That's abuse." "I know. Do you? Because you talk about it like it's just something that happened. Not like someone tried to kill you." She was right. I'd minimized it for so long, I'd forgotten how bad it actually was. I started writing about it. Journaling. Then poetry. Then actual essays. My writing professor encouraged me to submit to a literary magazine. I did. It got published. The essay was called "The Girl in the Snow." It went viral. I didn't use my real name in the essay. But people figured it out. Journalists started digging. Found the connection to Jonathan Pierce. My father's PR team went into overdrive, calling it fiction, calling me a liar, threatening lawsuits. My mother gave one interview where she said I was an ungrateful child prone to exaggeration. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Thomas and Elena backed up my story. So did the family doctor who'd treated my frostbite. The narrative shifted. Suddenly, my father wasn't the victim of a vindictive daughter. He was the monster who'd nearly killed his child. His remaining business partnerships dissolved. His social standing evaporated. 2 years after my essay was published, I got a call. My father had stage 4 pancreatic cancer. He was asking for me. I almost didn't go. Jade told me I didn't owe him anything. Dr. Chin said the choice was mine, and either way was valid. But I went. Not for him. For me. He was in a hospital in Boston. Private room, of course. But it couldn't hide how small he looked. How diminished. My mother wasn't there. They'd divorced the year before. She'd gotten the house and a settlement and moved to France. It was just him. And me. Arabella, he whispered. His voice was weak. It's Bella now. He nodded slowly. I read your essay. Good. Was it? He struggled for breath. Was it all true? Every word. A tear rolled down his hollow cheek. I'm sorry. 2 words. After all these years. Why did you do it? I asked. Why did you hate me so much? I didn't. I didn't hate you. You threw me into the snow. On Christmas Eve. You locked every door. You could have killed me. I know. Then why? He closed his eyes. My father was worse. He used to lock me in the basement for days. No food. No water. Said it would make me strong. He opened his eyes, looked at me. I thought I was being better. I thought I was teaching you. Teaching me what? That I was worthless? No. That you had to be hard. That weakness wasn't tolerated. I was 10 years old. I know. We sat in silence. Finally, I said, you didn't teach me to be hard. You taught me what kind of parent I never want to be. He nodded weakly. That's good. Thomas and Elena taught me what love looks like. Random people showed me more kindness than you ever did. I know. So I don't forgive you. I need you to know that. I don't forgive you, and I'm not here to make you feel better about dying. I understand. But I do hope you find peace. I hope you figure out whatever you need to figure out. Because I'm done carrying your pain. I stood up to leave. Bella? I turned back. You're strong. Stronger than I ever was. I know, I said. And I walked out. My father died 3 weeks after that conversation. He left everything to charity. Nothing to me or my mother. I was fine with that. I'd already built a life I was proud of. I'm 28 now. I run a non-profit for at-risk youth, specifically, kids from wealthy families experiencing abuse. Because here's what people don't talk about, abuse happens everywhere. Having money doesn't protect you. Sometimes it makes it worse. Because who believes the girl in the mansion is suffering? I work with kids like I was. Kids who look perfect on the outside but are breaking on the inside. I tell them what I wish someone had told me. You're not crazy. You're not overreacting. Your pain is real, even if you have a nice house and expensive clothes. And you deserve better. I married last year. His name is Sam. He's a teacher. He's kind. Patient. He's everything my father wasn't. We're expecting our first child in the spring. A daughter. We're naming her Elena. Thomas passed away 2 years ago. I gave the eulogy at his funeral. Elena still lives in that cottage. I visit her every month. She's the only grandmother my daughter will ever know. Last Christmas, Sam and I spent the holiday with Elena. We made tamales, Elena's family recipe. We watched old movies. We laughed. And for the first time in my life, Christmas felt like it was supposed to feel. Like home. Like love. Like safety. So yeah. My billionaire father threw me into a blizzard on Christmas Eve when I was 10 years old. He locked every door. He left me to freeze. And it was the worst night of my life. But it was also the night that taught me the most important lesson I've ever learned. Family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up when you're freezing in the snow. It's about who wraps you in blankets and makes you tea and tells you you're going to be okay. It's about who chooses you, even when they don't have to. Thomas and Elena chose me. My friends chose me. My husband chose me. And now I get to choose my daughter. Every single day. If you're out there right now, in your own version of the snow. If you're in a home that looks perfect but feels like ice. If you're with people who should love you but don't. I need you to hear this. It's not your fault. You're not too sensitive. You're not asking for too much. You deserve warmth. You deserve love. You deserve to be chosen. And if the people who are supposed to love you can't do that, then find the people who will. They're out there. I promise. Keep walking. Keep surviving. One day, you'll build the life you deserve. And it will be so much better than anything you left behind. Merry Christmas. And if no one else has told you today, I'm proud of you. For surviving. For still being here. For not giving up. You're stronger than you know. 10 months after my father's death, the letter arrived. It came in a thick cream envelope with a Boston postmark and my name, Bella Pierce, written in handwriting I didn't recognize. No return address. Inside was a single brass key and a note on heavy stationery that read, "The vault opens for you now. Come alone. 47, Beacon Street, subbasement. Ask for Mr. Whitlock." That was it. No signature. I should have thrown it away. Every rational part of me screamed that it was a trap, a prank, or, worse, some final cruel joke from beyond the grave. My father had spent 30 years proving he was capable of anything. But I went. Something about the key felt heavier than metal. It felt like unfinished business. 47, Beacon Street was one of those old Brahmin buildings that never made it onto any tourist map, 6 stories of carved limestone, gargoyles scowling down at the common, the kind of place where secret societies allegedly still meet. The lobby smelled like lemon polish and cigar smoke that had soaked into the walls in 1893 and never left. A man in a charcoal suit was waiting by the elevator. Mid-60s, silver hair slicked back, eyes the posture of someone who'd spent his life guarding other people's secrets. "Miss Pierce?" His voice was quiet, cultured, almost gentle. "I'm Whitlock. Your father retained me 31 years ago with instructions that, upon his death, I was to deliver that key to you personally, and only you. Retained you for what? To protect something he said belonged to you by right. Something he took. Something he was ashamed of taking. He pressed the elevator button marked SB, subbasement. The doors closed with a whisper. We descended past B2, B3, B4. The panel only went to SB. I didn't even know buildings in Boston went this deep. The elevator opened directly into a private vault the size of a small apartment. Temperature controlled, low amber lighting, rows of steel drawers and locked cabinets. In the center stood a single mahogany table. On it, one leather-bound ledger and a small titanium box the size of a hardcover book. Whitlock gestured to the chair. Everything in this room is now legally yours. The building's ownership transferred to a trust in your name the day your father died. Taxes paid for the next 50 years. I laughed, an involuntary, sharp sound. He disinherited me. No, Miss Pierce. He disinherited Arabella Pierce, the daughter he believed he'd broken. He never disinherited Bella Pierce, the woman who survived him. He simply separated the two in his mind. A coward's way of trying to make amends without ever having to say it to your face. He tapped the ledger. This documents every asset he hid from the IRS, from your mother, from his creditors. Offshore accounts, shell companies, art, gold, bearer bonds. Current valuation is $482 million. I stared at him. My knees actually buckled. I had to grip the table. Whitlock continued, softer now. The box contains something else. He instructed me to tell you, his exact words, she'll either burn it or forgive me. I don't deserve the second option, but I'm selfish enough to hope for it. He left me alone, the elevator doors closing with the same whisper. I didn't touch the ledger. I went straight for the titanium box. It had a simple combination lock, 8 digits. I tried my birthday. Nothing. My mother's. Nothing. Then, on instinct, I typed the date I almost died, 12241998. Click. Inside was a stack of cassette tapes labeled in my father's handwriting, a stack of Polaroids, and a second, smaller envelope with my name on it. I picked up the first tape. Label, age 4, first lie. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped it. There had to be 50 tapes. I found a 1990s Walkman in a drawer, still worked, batteries fresh, as if he'd known I'd need it. I pressed play. My father's voice, younger, stronger, filled the vault. If you're listening to this, I'm dead. Good. One less monster in the world. This is the first time I lied to you, Arabella. You were 4. You asked why Mommy was crying in the bathroom again, and I told you she had allergies. Truth was, I'd just told her if she ever tried to leave me I'd make sure she never saw you again. I was already this man at 35. I never got better. I only got richer. Click. End of tape. I sat down hard on the marble floor. Tape 2, age 6, the horse. Tape 3, age 8, the birthday party I canceled because a deal closed. Tape 4, age 10, Christmas Eve. That one I couldn't play yet. I set it aside like it was radioactive. The Polaroids were worse. Pictures of me asleep in my bed, taken from the doorway. Dozens of them. On the back of each, a date and a single line. She smiled in her sleep tonight. I don't deserve to see it. She asked for a hug today. I told her I was busy. I wasn't. She wore the necklace her grandmother gave her. I wanted to rip it off her neck because it reminded me Catherine's mother loved her more than I ever could. Every photo a confession. The envelope held a letter, 12 pages, handwritten, dated the week before he died. Bella. You won. Not in the way you think. You won because you became the thing I never could, decent. I spent my life collecting power because I was terrified of being powerless again, the boy locked in a basement with no food. I thought if I had enough money, enough control, no one could ever hurt me again. I hurt you instead. Worse than my father ever hurt me. And I did it sober, on purpose, with the lights on. There is no apology large enough. I used to watch you sleep and hate myself so much I wanted to put a gun in my mouth. But I was too much of a coward to pull the trigger and too selfish to set you free while I was alive. So I did the only thing I could think of. I spent the last 5 years moving every dime I could into accounts only you can access. Your mother doesn't know. The lawyers don't know. The government doesn't know. It's yours. Burn it, give it away, I don't care. It's blood money and it's cursed, but it's the only sorry I have left. If you're reading this, I'm rotting and you're breathing. That's a start. There's one more thing in the vault back wall, 3rd drawer from the left. I saved the worst for last. I love you. I always did. I just didn't know what love was supposed to do when it grew up. JP. I didn't cry. Not then. I found the drawer. Inside was a single DVD in a clear case labeled Security Footage, December 24, 1998, front door and foyer. My stomach turned to ice. I knew what it was before I even loaded it into the player Whitlock had left on the table. The screen flickered to life. Timestamp 10:47 p.m. There I was. 10 years old, barefoot in a white nightgown, pounding on the inside of the glass door while snow swirled behind me. My mouth open in a scream no one could hear through the soundproofing. The camera switched to the foyer. My father standing there, arms crossed, watching me on the monitor. My mother beside him, hand over her mouth, not in horror, I realized now, but to hide a smirk. She was drunk. She actually laughed at one point, a sharp, brittle sound, and said, "She'll learn." My father didn't laugh. He just stared. For 43 minutes the timestamp showed he stood there while I froze outside. At 1 hour and 9 minutes, he finally turned away. The lights in the foyer dimmed to night mode. The exterior camera caught me collapsing near the stone wall at 1:52 a.m. Thomas's truck lights swept across the screen at 2:07. I watched the whole thing. Every minute. When it ended, I sat in the dark vault for a long time. Then I took the DVD, put it back in its case, and slipped it into my pocket. I left the money where it was. I had something more dangerous now. Proof. I drove home to the little Craftsman salmon I had bought in JP with my own money, the one with the lemon yellow door and the porch swing that creaked just right in summer. It was past midnight when I let myself in quietly because Sam was already asleep, 8 months pregnant and needing every minute she could get, but the second I closed the door she sat up in bed, hair wild, eyes wide. "Bella? You okay?" I wasn't. I sat on the edge of the mattress and handed her the DVD case. She read the label and her face went pale. "Is this what I think it is?" I nodded. She didn't ask if I wanted her to watch it. She just put her arms around me and let me shake until the shaking stopped. The next morning I called Jade. "I need the meanest investigative reporter you know." Jade didn't even hesitate. "Lena Navarro, Boston Globe." She ate Harvey Weinstein's PR team for breakfast and still had room for dessert. I met Lena 2 days later in a coffee shop in Back Bay. She was tiny, maybe 5'1", with a buzz cut dyed electric blue and a voice like gravel soaked in honey. I slid the DVD across the table. I want the world to see exactly who Jonathan Pierce was. She popped it into a ruggedized laptop right there, headphones on, face unreadable. When it finished, she closed the lid slowly. You sure you want this is a one-way door, Bella? Once this airs, there's no closing it. I thought about the little girl pounding on the glass. I'm sure. Lena's story dropped 3 weeks later, front page above the fold, with a still image of my 10-year-old self frozen in terror and the headline, Billionaire's secret tape, he watched his daughter freeze. The internet exploded. Within hours the footage was everywhere, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, cable news running it on loop with the faces of the adults blurred, but everyone knew who they were. My mother, sunning herself on the Côte d'Azur, suddenly found paparazzi swimming in her pool trying to get a statement. She released one line through her lawyer, deeply saddened by my daughter's ongoing fabrications. The backlash was volcanic. Old Money Boston closed ranks for about 6 hours, then started leaking like a sieve. Staff who'd been fired during the scandal years came forward. Nannies. Maids. Even the chef who'd worked Christmas Eve 1998 told CNN how my father had ordered every exterior door deadbolted from the inside panel that night. He said the child needed discipline. The state of Massachusetts opened a child endangerment investigation retroactively. Statute of limitations had run, but the Attorney General held a press conference anyway. Some crimes are too heinous to let history sanitize. My nonprofit's donations went from comfortable to insane overnight. We had to hire 3 new accountants just to handle the checks. Strangers started sending baby clothes with notes, for Elena, so she never knows cold. I couldn't leave the house without someone stopping me to say thank you, usually through tears. Sam had to start walking 20 feet behind me pretending to be security so I could buy milk without causing a scene. Then the letter from my mother arrived. Not an invitation actually, on the same heavy cream stock my father had used. Dinner. Just the 2 of us. The Ritz-Carlton, private room. Neutral ground. I almost binned it. Sam found it in the trash and fished it out. You don't owe her anything, she said, but you might owe yourself the chance to say everything you never got to say when you were small. So I went. My mother looked like a magazine had tried to preserve her in 2005 and only partially succeeded. Botox, fillers, the works, but her eyes were the same Arctic blue. She stood when I entered, air-kissed nowhere near my cheeks, and ordered a martini before the waiter even reached the table. Darling, she began, this has all gotten so dreadfully out of hand. I waited. She sipped. The footage is unfortunate. But you must understand your father was under enormous pressure. He watched me die for 43 minutes, Mother. She flinched like I'd slapped her. People will forgive a man his temper. They always have. But a mother who doesn't protect her child? That's harder to spin. I leaned forward. Is that why you're here? Spin control? She set the glass down with a soft clink. I'm prepared to make you a one-time offer. $50 million and I will publicly corroborate whatever story you choose. That it was all your father. That I was terrified of him. That I begged him to let you in. Whatever helps you sleep at night. In exchange you retract the footage and we both move on. I laughed so hard the waiter poked his head in. You think I want your money? Everyone wants money, Arabella. I have his money. Almost $500 million he spent his last years hiding for me. Money you didn't even know existed. I could buy this hotel tonight and turn it into a shelter if I felt like it. For the first time in my life I saw genuine fear in her eyes. Then what do you want? I want you to feel, for 1 minute, what it was like to be 10 years old and realize the people who made you would rather you died than inconvenience them. I stood up. But I realize now that's impossible. You're not wired for it. I left her with the check. 2 weeks later she fled to Switzerland and hasn't been seen in the States since. The day the first lawsuit landed. Not against my parents, they were both dead or gone, but against the Pierce Family Foundation, the one that still bore our name and still gave grants to children's hospitals while conveniently forgetting whose money built it. The plaintiff was me. I sued to dissolve the foundation and redirect every single asset to organizations supporting abused rich kids. The board tried to fight it. They lasted 4 months. We won. $1.2 billion redistributed. I kept none of it. I didn't need to. I was already wealthy beyond anything I'd imagined, but more importantly I was free. And then, on a random Tuesday in March, my water broke 3 weeks early. Sam drove like a man possessed through Boston traffic while I called Elena from the passenger seat. It's time, abuela. She was at the hospital before we were. Elena Catherine Pierce came screaming into the world at 3:17 a.m., red-faced and perfect and furious in the way only newborns can be. Sam cut the cord. Elena held my hand so hard I thought she'd break it. When they placed my daughter on my chest I looked down at her tiny, fierce face and whispered the first promise every parent makes but that I meant with every cell in my body: I will never lock you out. Not ever. No matter what. She blinked up at me with unfocused storm-gray eyes and I swear she understood. 3 months later we held a little ceremony in the backyard. Just family, meaning Jade, Elena, Sam's parents, a few close friends from the shelter. We planted a sugar maple where the grass was still patchy from winter and underneath it we buried a small fireproof box containing the only copy left of that Christmas Eve footage. I didn't want it destroyed completely, some evidence should survive, but I wanted it out of my house and out of my life. We covered the roots with soil and Jade poured champagne over them like we were christening a ship. Sam hung a swing from the lowest branch. When little Elena is big enough she'll learn to pump her legs and fly. And every Christmas Eve we'll light candles on that spot and tell her the story of the night her mama learned what love actually looks like. Not the cold kind that lives in mansions. The kind that finds you half dead in the snow and carries you home. The first year of Elena's life was soft and loud and perfect in the way only new motherhood can be: sleepless nights, milk-stained shirts, the constant smell of baby shampoo, but it was also the year the past refused to stay buried. The footage had done its job too well. Every true crime podcast wanted the girl in the snow. Netflix offered 7 figures for a docuseries. A publisher slid a $9 million memoir deal across the table with a bow on it. I turned them all down. I'd said what I needed to say. The money felt like blood again. Then Harper's Bazaar put me on the cover anyway, shot by Annie Leibovitz, me in a simple white sweater holding baby Elena on the porch swing, headline: The heiress who burned the kingdom down. The issue sold out in 48 hours. Strangers started showing up at the house. Mostly women. They'd leave flowers on the steps or handwritten letters pushed through the mail slot. You told my story when I couldn't. I was locked in a pool house at 12. My mother watched too. Sam installed a Ring camera and a gate. I started reading every letter. There were thousands. One Tuesday a black town car parked across the street for 3 days straight. Tinted windows, no plates. Sam called the cops. They ran the VIN, came back registered to a Delaware shell. The driver vanished. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing my father's face on the security monitor, arms crossed, waiting for me to break. At 2 a.m. I went downstairs and opened the safe where I kept the brass key to the Beacon Street vault. I hadn't been back since the day Whitlock handed it over. Something told me it was time. I kissed Elena's sleeping forehead, told Sam I'd be back by dinner, and drove into the city at dawn. Whitlock met me in the lobby looking like he hadn't aged a day. I wondered how long it would take, he said. He took me deeper than before, past the mahogany table to a steel door I hadn't noticed the first time. Retinal scan, his eye, then mine. The door slid open into a second, smaller vault. Inside were rows of safety deposit boxes and one stainless steel cabinet with a touchscreen. Whitlock entered a code. The cabinet opened revealing a single thumb drive and a note in my father's handwriting. Play only if they come for you. I stared at it. Who's they? Whitlock's face was grim. Your father wasn't just rich, Miss Pierce. He was useful. Certain three-letter agencies used his shell companies to move money around the way other people use Kleenex. When the scandal hit, a lot of people got nervous. They assumed the tapes were the worst of it. They were wrong. I took the thumb drive. My hand didn't even shake. I was done being afraid of dead men. Back home I plugged it into an air-gapped laptop. One file. 128 gigabytes. Labeled insurance. It was everything. Names, dates, routing numbers, recorded calls, photographs of classified documents, offshore accounts that funded black sites, election interference, even a grainy video of a former vice president laughing with my father about that little problem in Caracas. My father hadn't just hidden money. He'd hidden the kind of secrets that get people disappeared. There was a second folder labeled for Bella, read me. A single text file. If you're watching this, they've started circling. The men in the town car are probably theirs. You have two choices. Release it and spend the rest of your life running, or give it to the one person I trust who isn't on any payroll. Her contact is in the metadata. Do not call me a hero. I was keeping this to save my own skin. You get to decide if you want to finish what I never had the guts to. I love you. I'm sorry. Again. I closed the laptop and threw up in the kitchen sink. Sam found me there 20 minutes later. I told him everything. He listened without interrupting, then said, whatever you decide, we do it together. But we're not running. This is our home. Elena's home. We called the contact. A woman answered on the third ring. This is Agent Rachel Park, DOJ Inspector General's office. I've been waiting 12 years for Jonathan Pierce to die. We met her 2 days later in a safe house in Quantico Runs outside Richmond. She was 40-something, Korean-American, looked like a suburban soccer mom until you noticed the Glock on her hip and the eyes that had seen everything twice. She watched the entire drive without blinking. When it ended she said, we can protect you. New names, new country, the works. No, I said. Then we can't guarantee your safety. I don't want new names. I want them to be afraid of mine. She smiled for the first time. Then let's go to war. The leak was surgical. Not a data dump, a controlled burn. One folder a week, sent anonymously to 5 major newsrooms and 3 foreign outlets simultaneously. We started with the vice president video. By the time the pundits finished screaming about deepfakes, we dropped the banking records that proved it was real. Congress launched 4 separate investigations. 2 senators resigned within a month. A cabinet secretary retired for health reasons. The black town car never came back. 6 months into the leaks, I got a call from a blocked number. Male voice, digitally altered. "You're playing with fire, little girl." I recognized the cadence anyway. "Hi, Mom." Silence. "Then, you have no idea what you've started." "I know exactly what I started." "How's the chalet in Goshtad?" Click. She never called again. The final file went live on the first anniversary of the Harper's cover. It was my father's voice, recorded 2 weeks before he died, listing every favor, every bribe, every threat. At the end he said, "If my daughter is listening, tell her I was proud of her the day she walked out of my hospital room and didn't look back. Tell her the world is better with her in it and worse with me gone. Tell her I'm sorry took me dying to be useful." The networks played it on loop. The headline the next morning wasn't about corruption anymore. It was Jonathan Pierce's final confession, "I was the monster." I watched it once, turned off the television, and took Elena to the park. She was learning to walk, wobbly and fearless, falling every 3rd step and popping back up laughing. Sam pushed me on the swing while she chased pigeons. For the first time in my life, I understood what my therapist meant when she said healing isn't linear. Some days the past is a whisper. Some days it's a scream. But it doesn't get to drive anymore. That night Jade came over with pizza and bad wine. We put Elena to bed and sat on the porch. "You know you're basically Batman now, right?" she said. "Rich orphan, secret vault, taking down Gotham's corrupt elite." I snorted. "I'm more like if Batman opened a non-profit and changed diapers between fight scenes." "Exactly." Hotter. We clinked plastic cups. A year later, Agent Park showed up unannounced with a bottle of champagne and a manila envelope. Inside was a presidential pardon, my father's name, posthumous, in recognition of substantial assistance to national security. I laughed until I cried. They pardoned the dead guy so the live ones could keep breathing. Park shrugged. Politics. She stayed for dinner. Elena called her Auntie Ray by the end of the night. Life settled into a new normal. Mornings at the non-profit, afternoons with story time and mashed bananas, evenings with Sam's head on my lap while I read case files or grant proposals. The vault money funded 3 new shelters, one of them on the Berkshire's property I bought back at auction just to tear the mansion down. We kept the stone wall where I collapsed that night and built a garden around it. Kids plant flowers there every spring. I visit once a year on Christmas Eve, lay a candle at the wall, and leave before the memories can bite too hard. This past December Elena was 3.5. We baked cookies with Elena, the real Elena, while Sam strung lights on the porch. Snow started falling around dusk, fat lazy flakes like the night everything changed. Elena pressed her face to the window. "Mama, can we go play in the snow?" I froze for half a second, old reflex, then felt Sam's hand on the small of my back. I grabbed her tiny red coat. "Let's go, baby." We built a snowman army in the front yard. She laughed so hard she fell over backward and made snow angels until her cheeks were bright pink. When we came inside, I wrapped her in the same kind of thick blanket Elena, the real one, had wrapped me in 27 years earlier. We drank hot chocolate with too many marshmallows and watched The Grinch. She fell asleep against my chest halfway through, breathing slow and steady. Sam took a picture. I look at it sometimes when the dark gets loud. In it, I'm staring down at my daughter like she's the answer to every question I was ever afraid to ask. Because she is. The past didn't disappear. It just got smaller. A scar, not the wound. And scars mean you survived. Elena turned 5 the spring the second letter came. This one wasn't cream stationery, it was cheap prison paper, smudged with fingerprints, postmarked USP Canaan, Pennsylvania. The name on the return address made my lungs stop working, Marcus Hale. My father's former personal attorney, the man who'd once told a judge under oath that I was a troubled teen with a vivid imagination. He was serving 18 years for tax evasion and obstruction, part of the dominoes I'd tipped over. The letter was short. I can give you the one thing your father never did, the truth about the night your grandmother died. Visit me. Bring no lawyers. Come alone. I'm dying anyway. I burned the letter in the kitchen sink and watched the edges curl black. Sam found the ashes in the drain the next morning. He didn't ask questions, he just booked the flight to Pennsylvania and came with me anyway. You're not walking into another cage alone, he said. Not ever again. Canaan is a concrete fortress in the middle of nowhere. They put me in a gray plastic chair across from a man I barely recognized, Marcus, 1'6" and shark smooth, now skeletal, orange jumpsuit hanging off him, oxygen tubes in his nose. Liver cancer, stage 4. He had maybe weeks. You grew up gorgeous, he rasped. Just like he always said you would. I hated him for that too. Talk. He slid a Polaroid across the table. My grandmother, elegant even in a hospital bed, holding newborn me. On the back, my father's handwriting, she'll never know how much this cost. Your grandmother didn't die of a heart attack, Marcus said. She died because she threatened to take you and leave the country. She'd found out Jonathan was using you as collateral in a deal with some very bad people. Offshore money, Russian money. She told him she'd go to the FBI if he didn't sign over custody. He signed something else instead, an order to up her morphine until her heart gave out. I was in the room. I watched the numbers climb. I felt the room tilt. All these years I'd worn her locket like armor, and I'd never known she died trying to save me. Why tell me now? Because your father paid me to keep quiet. The money stops when I'm dead. And because, his voice cracked, because my own daughter won't visit me. I want someone to remember I was human once. I left before the guards even called time. Sam caught me in the parking lot when my legs gave out. We sat in the hood of the rental car until I could breathe again. That night I called Elena the real Elena. She listened without interrupting, then said, Mija, your abuela is dancing in heaven knowing you're raising that baby with love. That's the only revenge she ever wanted. I thought that would be the end of ghosts. I was wrong. 3 months later a woman showed up at the nonprofit. Mid-30s, designer clothes that didn't quite fit right, eyes darting like a cornered animal. She asked for me by my old name, Arabella. I'm Victoria Langford, she said. Well, I was. Now I'm just Vic. She rolled up her sleeve. Burn marks in the shape of a belt buckle. My father was your father's business partner in '99. When the money went dark after your leaks, he took it out on us. My mom overdosed last year. I've been running ever since. I need help disappearing. I looked at her and saw 10-year-old me staring back. We gave her a new name, a new city, a new life. Then we gave the next one. And the next. Word spread in certain circles. If your last name opens boardrooms but your father locks doors, there's a place in Boston that will open one for you. We outgrew the little house in JP. The vault money bought a decommissioned school in Dorchester, red brick, huge windows, playground still intact. We turned it into Haven House. 30 beds, therapy dogs, trauma counselors, law clinic, even a nursery so teen moms could finish high school. I ran it full-time. Sam taught 3rd grade across the street and walked over every lunch to eat with whoever needed a dad that day. Elena, my Elena, started kindergarten. Her teacher called me in October. She punched a little boy, Mrs. Alvarez said, trying not to smile. He told her girls can't be superheroes. She said, my mom took down a whole government. Watch me. I didn't even pretend to be mad. Christmas when she was 6 we went bigger than usual. Haven House threw a party for 200 kids who'd never had a safe Christmas. Elena wore a red cape and handed out presents like she was born for it. At the end of the night she tugged my sleeve. Mommy, can we go see the snow wall? We drove up to the Berkshires' place after midnight. The garden was lit with soft white lights now, garden quiet under fresh powder. Elena ran ahead, boots crunching, and stopped at the stone wall. Someone, one of the teens probably, had carved words into the frost, "You were never alone." She traced the letters with mittened fingers. "Is this where you fell down?" "Yes, baby." "And Thomas found you?" "Yes." She thought about that for a long time. Then she lay down in the snow and made an angel right where I'd almost died. When she stood up she said, "Now it's a happy place." I cried so hard I couldn't see straight. Sam had to carry me back to the car. The next morning my phone buzzed with a news alert. Catherine Pierce Langford, my mother, dead in a single-car accident on an icy road outside Geneva. Police said alcohol was involved. No other vehicles. I stared at the screen until it went dark. Jade came over that night with tequila and silence. We drank to dead monsters. I didn't cry. A week later a Swiss attorney contacted me. My mother had left everything to me after all. The chalet, the jewelry, $38 million in liquidated assets. The note attached was 2 words, I'd never heard from her lips, "I'm sorry." I donated every cent to Haven House. We named the new therapy wing Catherine's Garden. Irony is a hell of a decorator. Years started to blur in the best way. Elena turned 10, the same age I was the night everything broke. We threw her a party with 50 kids from Haven and a bounce house shaped like a castle. She wore the locket now, my grandmother's, resized for a child. Inside I'd put a tiny picture of all of us, Sam, me, Elena, real Elena, Jade, even Agent Park making a rare goofy face. That night she asked if she could read my snowbook, the one strangers kept asking me to write. I'd started it a dozen times and always stopped. But I sat her on my lap and told her the whole story, no sugar, just truth. When I got to the part where Thomas carried me to the truck she hugged me so hard my ribs creaked. "I'm glad you didn't die, Mommy." "Me too, bug." She thought for a minute. "When I'm big I'm gonna build houses for all the kids who get locked out." I kissed the top of her head and knew the cycle was broken for good. The book finally wrote itself after that. I called it The Girl in the Snow. It came out the week Elena turned 12. New York Times bestseller list for 87 weeks. Translated into 30 languages. Royalties built Haven House 2 in Los Angeles, Haven House 3 in Chicago. Oprah called. I said yes this time. The interview aired the same week my mother's wing opened. Oprah asked the question everyone wanted answered, do you forgive them? I looked straight into the camera. Forgiveness isn't a gift you give the person who hurt you. It's a gift you give yourself so you can stop carrying their poison. I put the poison down a long time ago. That's enough. Elena watched the clip on repeat for days. Then she asked if we could start a tradition. Every Christmas Eve the residents of every Haven house vote on one kid who's been especially brave that year. That kid gets to spend the night in the garden in the Berkshires, sleep in a heated yurt we built near the stone wall, wake up to presents and pancakes and the story of the girl who kept walking until she found people who carried her the rest of the way. Last year the vote went to a 13-year-old named Marcus. Quiet boy, cigarette burns up both arms, father in Canaan serving life for murder. When we told him he cried so hard he couldn't speak. Elena held his hand the whole drive up. They made snow angels together until sunrise. This Christmas Eve will be the 15th anniversary of the night I almost didn't survive. Haven House is throwing the biggest party yet. 500 kids across 3 cities linked by live stream. Elena, now 15 and taller than me, is MCANG. She wrote the speech herself. I peeked at the draft. Some stories start with once upon a time. Mine starts with a locked door. But every kid out there watching, if you're cold tonight, if you're scared, if you think nobody's coming, listen to me. The door only stays locked if you stop knocking. Keep knocking. Keep walking. Someone will hear you. Someone will come running. And when they do, pay it forward. Because the little girl in the snow grew up and built a whole lot of doors that never lock from the inside. She's going to slay. Sam and I will be in the back row holding hands like we have every year since the first party. Elena, real Elena, now 82 and fierce as ever, will be in her wheelchair surrounded by teenagers who call her abuela. Jade will be drunk on spiked cocoa trying to flirt with Agent Park, who still shows up every year in ugly Christmas sweaters. And somewhere out there, a kid who thinks tonight is the worst night of their life will hear my daughter's voice and decide to take one more step through the snow. That's the real ending. Not revenge. Not even justice. Redemption, maybe. Or something better, proof that love, real love, the kind that finds you half dead and says stay with me, is stronger than any blizzard. The girl in the snow didn't die. She grew wings instead. And she taught every kid who came after her how to fly. The night Elena turned 18, the sky over Boston caught fire. Not metaphorically. Actual flames. Haven House, Chicago burned to the ground at 2:14 a.m., arson confirmed within hours, accelerant in 5-gallon drums, the word liar spray-painted across the playground slide in dripping red. No kids inside, thank God for Christmas break, but the message was crystal. Someone still hated what we'd built. Elena was already on a plane before I could stop her, private charter funded by book royalties, landing at Midway with Jade and a go-bag full of laptops and righteous fury. By dawn she'd rallied every former resident with a TikTok account and the hashtag #HavenWillRise hit 1 billion views before lunch. Donations flooded in so fast the servers crashed twice. We rebuilt bigger, fireproof everything, sprinklers that could drown a dragon, and renamed the new courtyard Phoenix Circle. The reopening ribbon cutting was scheduled for the 4th anniversary of the fire. That's when the package arrived at our Boston brownstone, plain brown box, no return address, postmarked Miami. Inside, a single VHS tape labeled ZMAZ 1998 alternate angle and a flash drive. Sam took one look and called Agent Park. She was there in 40 minutes with a forensics team. The VHS was exactly what it claimed, another security camera, one I'd never known existed, mounted inside the foyer chandelier, pointed down the main hallway. The footage started at 10:51 p.m. the night I was locked out. My father stood under that camera for 43 minutes watching the monitor, same as before, but this angle caught audio. His voice, low and shaking, "She has to learn, Catherine. She has to break so I can fix her into something useful." My mother's reply was slurred champagne laughter. "Darling, if she freezes maybe we'll finally get the son we should have had." Then the new part. After Thomas carried me away, my father walked straight to that camera, looked right into it, and said, "Delete the hallway feed before morning. If anyone asks," the child wandered off and came back on her own. The man he was speaking to stepped into frame, Marcus Hale, 27 years younger, nodding like a good little soldier. The flash drive held one file, a 40-second clip dated 3 weeks ago, shot on a phone inside Canaan prison. Marcus Hale on his deathbed, tubes everywhere, whispering to an unseen visitor, "Tell Bella the Russians never forgot. They're coming for the girl now that she's grown. Blood debt. Tell her I tried to warn her." He flatlined before he finished the sentence. Agent Park's face when the clip ended was the grimmest I'd ever seen. "We always suspected your father's Russian money was bratva, not oligarchs. The kind of people who keep score across generations. They stayed quiet while you were dismantling old white men in D.C. because it served their interests too. But burning the Chicago house was a declaration." Elena, who'd been watching over my shoulder, simply said, "Good. Let them come where I can see them." I wanted to ground her for life. Instead, I hugged her so hard she squeaked. The next 6 months were war by other means. We moved the entire family to a safe house in Virginia for a minute. Park's people found C4 wired under my car. Elena refused witness protection, said she wasn't hiding from ghosts anymore. Instead, she weaponized her birthday. She turned the 18th celebration into a global live stream fundraiser, 18 hours, 18 cities, every Haven house open to cameras, every survivor telling their story unfiltered. By hour 17 the total hit $300 million and climbing. At the stroke of midnight Eastern Time she looked straight into the lens and spoke in fluent Russian. "She'd been taking lessons in secret for 2 years. If you want me, come yourself. Stop hiding behind fire and children." The chat exploded. The brought the princess energy trending worldwide. 2 nights later a drone dropped a metal case on the lawn of the Virginia safe house. Inside, a matryoshka doll. Nested inside each layer a Polaroid of me at different ages, the last doll empty except for a lock of dark hair and a note in Cyrillic, "First warning. Next time we take the daughter." Sam wanted to nuke the planet. Park wanted to flood known Bratva channels with the footage we still held as a deterrent. Elena had a third option. She flew to Miami alone, with 2 former Navy SEALs now on our security team, and walked into a club owned by a man named Victor Orloff, 42, Harvard MBA, public face of the clean money, private face of the money that killed journalists. She walked right up to his VIP booth, sat down, slid the matryoshka across the table and said in perfect unaccented English, "You touched my family's house. I'm here to discuss terms." The whole thing was wired. Park was listening from a van. Orloff smiled the way sharks smile. "Your mother sends regards from the bottom of Lake Geneva." Elena smiled back, colder. "Tell her the lake's lovely this time of year. Now let's talk about why you're still breathing." She laid out the deal. The Bratva would publicly fund the rebuilding of every building they ever torched, plus $100 million annual donation to anti-trafficking organizations, in exchange for the final insurance file my father never released, the one that named names currently running for U.S. Senate. Orloff laughed until she played the first 30 seconds on her phone. His face changed. Where did you get that? From the man you had killed in prison last month. He mailed it before you got to him. Silence stretched like piano wire. Finally Orloff raised his glass. To strong women. Your father would be terrified. He was, Elena said. That's why I won. The agreement was signed on a cocktail napkin and notarized the next morning by a very nervous Miami lawyer. The money hit our accounts within 72 hours, laundered so clean it sparkled. Park pretended to be furious and then sent Elena a fruit basket the size of a Buick. We flew home the long way, commercial, middle seats, no one looking for us anymore. Elena slept on my shoulder the whole flight, whispering in her sleep, "We don't hide, Mommy. We burn brighter." The Phoenix Circle reopening was held on the summer solstice. 5,000 people showed up, food trucks, fireworks, every news network on the planet. Elena took the stage in a white dress that looked suspiciously like the nightgown I'd worn at 10. But redesigned by a black queer designer from Chicago who'd grown up in foster care. She held up the signed cocktail napkin encased in glass. This is what happens when you try to scare us. We buy your soul with your own money and make the world better with it. The crowd roared so loud the ground shook. I stood backstage crying into Sam's shoulder while our daughter owned the night. Later, when the fireworks lit the sky blood red and gold, she found me by the new memorial wall where we'd embedded stones engraved with every name of every kid we'd ever helped. She slipped her hand into mine. You okay, Mom? I looked at the wall, at the lights, at the teenagers dancing like no one had ever hurt them. I'm perfect, baby. She leaned her head on my shoulder, 18 going on 80. Good. Because I have college applications due and I'm putting Haven House as my permanent address. Figured someone should keep the family business going. I laughed through tears. You planning to outdo your old mom? Planning to stand on her shoulders. The last firework bloomed into the shape of a phoenix. Cameras caught it perfectly. The clip went viral before the smoke even cleared. Somewhere in whatever afterlife exists, I hope my father saw it. I hope he saw what his cowardice birthed, a girl who refused to freeze. A woman who melted chains with her own heat. And now a new generation carrying torches instead of scars. The girl in the snow didn't just survive. She became the sun. And nobody locks out the sun. Elena left for Yale in the fall, sociology and computer science double major, minor in kicking doors down when they're locked, her words. We drove her up in the old Suburban, the one with the cracked dashboard and the bumper sticker that reads Love Fear. She refused the private security detail, took one duffel bag, her grandmother's locket, and a flash drive labeled Final Insurance in case anyone ever got stupid again. Move-in day was chaos, fresh faces, crying parents, overeager RAs, but when we got to her suite the roommate was already there, a tiny girl with purple braids and a Haven House hoodie 2 sizes too big. Her name was Sasha Orloff, 19, born in Brighton Beach, father doing 25 to life in federal prison for, surprise, money laundering for Victor Orloff, the same Victor who now sent us Christmas cards with kittens on them. Sasha looked at Elena, looked at me, looked back at Elena and said, "So you're the reason my dad's college fund became a burn ward in Chicago. Cool. Wanna get dumplings?" They've been best friends ever since. The first time Elena brought Sasha home for Thanksgiving I nearly dropped the turkey. Victor himself sent a honey-baked ham with a note, "Peace tastes better than revenge is bad for cholesterol." Sam framed the note. The second year Elena was gone, the house felt hollow in a way I hadn't expected. Sam caught me crying in the laundry room over one of her tiny kindergarten shirts I'd found in a box. He didn't say anything, just folded me into his arms and let me soak his sweater. That night we decided to foster. First came Mateo, 8 years old, selective mute, cigarette burns on his back shaped like Rolex logos. His father was a hedge fund prince currently under indictment. Then came Aisha and Amir, twins, 12, removed from a Back Bay penthouse after their mother fell down marble stairs one too many times. Then came Jaden, 16, trans kid whose senator father tried to pray away the gay in a conversion camp in Uganda until we extracted him with help from an underground railroad we'd quietly funded for years. The house filled back up with footsteps and shouting and doors slamming and laughter at 2 a.m. and all the beautiful noise a family makes when it's healing. Sam quit teaching to run operations at Haven full-time. I stayed on the board but stepped back from day to day so I could be the mom who was actually home when the school called. The kids started calling us Mom Bella and Dad Sam without us asking, and every time it happened my heart grew 3 sizes. Christmas Eve, when the house was full of 6 foster teens plus our regulars, we loaded 3 vans and drove to the Berkshire's garden. Snow was coming down thick and soft the way it did that night 31 years ago. We set up a huge heated tent, tables groaning with food, a sound system playing Old Soul because that's what the kids voted for. At 11:47 p.m., the exact minute the mansion door had slammed behind 10-year-old me, we turned off every light. 500 candles flickered to life, one for every kid currently sleeping safe in a Haven bed somewhere in the country. Elena stepped to the microphone in combat boots and the same white dress from the Phoenix opening, now vintage and patched with Haven patches from every city. She didn't give a speech. She just said, "If you're watching this live stream right now and you're cold, if someone who should love you just locked a door, look at all these lights. Every single one is a person who was once you and is now warm because someone opened a door. Your candle is already burning. You just have to walk toward it." The chat scrolled so fast it blurred. Tips hit 50 million in 6 minutes. At midnight we sang Happy Birthday to Me, because that's what the kids decided years ago. Christmas Eve is the day I was reborn. I blew out the candle on a cupcake Mateo had decorated with shaky blue icing that read "Still Here." Then the sky cracked open with northern lights, rare for Massachusetts, green and purple ribbons dancing like the universe itself showed up to the party. Every kid ran outside, mouths open, faces glowing, and for one perfect minute the only sound was awe. I felt arms around my waist, looked down, Jaden whispering, "They're proud of you, Mom Bella." I couldn't answer. I just held on. The following spring Sasha and Elena launched an app called Lantern. You open it when you're scared, hit one button, and it anonymously pings the nearest Haven safe house, volunteer driver, or underground contact. It also turns your phone flashlight into a strobe that spells SOS in Morse if you're in immediate danger. They open-sourced the code so anyone anywhere can run a node. Within a year, there were Lantern networks in 42 countries. Governments tried to ban it in 7. The kids just rerouted through Starlink and kept saving lives. Elena graduated summa cum laude at 21 with a thesis titled From Inherited Trauma to Inherited Power, a case study in generational wealth redistribution. The dedication page read, "For the girl in the snow." She kept walking so we could run. She flew home the day after commencement wearing a cap that said "Debt Paid in Full" and handed me a folder. Inside was the deed to the last piece of Pierce property still in the family name, a private island off the coast of Maine my father had bought in 2002 and never visited. She'd quietly purchased it through a trust the year before. "We're turning it into Haven Isles," she said. No gates. No locks. Just cabins and counselors and ocean and therapy goats. Opening next summer. You're not allowed to say no. I didn't. We broke ground on the summer solstice. Victor Orloff sent a construction crew as a graduation present. I let them stay. The first campers arrived the following June, 30 kids who'd aged out of foster care with nowhere to go. They planted a sugar maple in the exact center of the island and hung a swing from it. Elena hung a plaque that reads, "In memory of Thomas and Elena, who taught us doors are for opening." I turned 50 the year the island opened. Sam threw me a party on the beach with every kid we'd ever fostered, every Haven director, every survivor who could travel. They gave me a crown made of seashells and a book, leather-bound, thick as a dictionary. Inside were letters from thousands of them, one from every person whose life had brushed mine since the night I walked into the snow. The last letter was in Elena's handwriting. "Mom, you were 10 when they tried to kill your light. You're 50 and you've lit the whole damn world on fire. Thank you for teaching me warmth isn't something you give, not something you wait for. I love you to the stars and back. Happy rebirth day." I didn't cry in front of them. I waited until 3 a.m. when everyone was asleep in hammocks and tents, walked down to the water, let the Atlantic take every tear. The next morning I woke to find the kids had built a driftwood sign at the tide line facing the sunrise. It said, "The girl in the snow is now the woman who melted winter." Underneath in smaller letters, "And her daughter keeps the fire going." I took a picture and set it as my phone lock screen. It still is. Sometimes late at night when a new kid shows up at whatever haven they can reach, shaking, convinced they're broken forever, I show them that picture. Then I hand them a candle and tell them the only rule we have: when you're warm, you light someone else's. The flame never goes out. It just keeps traveling. From my bare feet in 1998 to Elena's boots on a stage in Chicago to Sasha's code running on a phone in Lagos to a goat farm in Maine where a kid who once thought love was a locked door now laughs so loud the gulls scatter. That's the real inheritance. Not the money. Not the secrets. Not even the justice. The heat. The refusal to freeze. The promise kept walking until the snow itself surrendered. So if you're reading this and it's cold where you are, if the people who should have carried you left you outside instead, hear me, the door is already open. The candle is lit. The girl in the snow is 54 now, still walking, still warm, still carrying strangers home. And she brought her daughter. And her daughter will bring hers. And the fire just keeps growing. Walk toward the light, sweetheart. You'll know us when you see us. We're the ones who left the door unlocked and the porch light burning. Always. I was 54 the winter the snow forgot how to fall in New England. Climate scientists called it the Great Pause, polar vortex collapse, record heat, whatever. Kids in Boston wore T-shirts on Christmas Eve for the first time in recorded history. The Berkshire's garden stayed brown and restless. No one knew what to do with a warm December. It felt like the planet itself had stage fright. Elena flew in from Geneva where she was finishing her PhD in restorative economics with a side hustle advising 3 governments on how to tax billionaires into funding universal trauma care. She stepped off the plane in sunglasses and a tank top that read "Tax the rich or I will." The foster kids, now teenagers and 20-somethings, met her at Logan with signs that said "Welcome home, General." She pretended to hate it and cried in the car the whole ride back. We had planned the usual Christmas Eve pilgrimage to the stone wall, but without snow it felt wrong. The kids voted instead to throw the biggest indoor-outdoor block party Dorchester had ever seen. We shut down 3 streets, strung 10,000 fairy lights, rented every space heater in New England, brought in food trucks from every haven city, set up screens the size of houses. By dusk 30,000 people filled the blocks around Haven House, Boston, survivors, donors, curious neighbors, TikTok kids who'd grown up on Elena's speeches, even Victor Orloff in a ridiculous Hawaiian shirt pretending to be somebody's uncle. At 11:47 p.m. the music cut. Elena climbed onto the main stage in barefoot despite the 50-degree air because some traditions are sacred, and held up the original brass key from the Beacon Street vault. The crowd went dead silent. She didn't need a mic 36 years ago. Tonight a man with this key locked a little girl outside to die. Tonight we're melting it down and turning it into a million tiny keys for emergency lockboxes in every domestic violence shelter on the eastern seaboard. Because no one gets locked out on our watch ever again. A forge had been rolled onto the stage, glowing orange. She dropped the key in. It flared white-hot and disappeared. The cheer that followed registered on seismographs in Connecticut. Then the sky did something no one expected. Clouds boiled in from nowhere, thick and low and silver. Temperature plummeted 20 degrees in 10 minutes. Fat perfect flakes started to fall, slow at first, then thick as curtains. The crowd lost its collective mind. Phones up, mouths open, strangers hugging. Snow in shirt sleeves on Christmas Eve after the hottest year ever recorded. Scientists later called it a microburst of polar air colliding with Atlantic moisture, a once-in-10,000 years fluke. We called it Thomas and Elena smiling. Elena looked straight up, tears freezing on her cheeks, and whispered, "Thanks for coming back one more time, old friends." The party became legend. CNN ran chopper footage. Twitter crashed for 43 minutes, poetic justice. Kids made snow angels on warm asphalt that was suddenly white. At 2:07 a.m., the exact minute Thomas's truck lights had found me in 1998, every screen cut to a single video Elena had cued, drone footage flying low over the Berkshire's garden where, overnight, volunteers had installed 36 illuminated ice sculptures, one for each year since that night. Each sculpture was a life-size child in a nightgown, arms outstretched, slowly melting under hidden heat lamps so that by dawn they would be gone. The final sculpture, at the stone wall, was me at 10, barefoot and defiant, and behind her stood every kid we'd ever helped, carved in clear ice, holding candles that never went out. The drone pulled back to reveal the formation spelled in 10-foot letters across the snow. We kept walking. The feed went global. 2 billion views before breakfast. I stood in the crowd with Sam's arms around me from behind and our youngest foster kid, Luz, 9 years old and fresh from a father who used her as an ashtray, asleep on my hip. I didn't even try to stop crying. When the video ended, Elena jumped off the stage, ran straight to me, wrapped us all in a hug that smelled like snow and revolution. Luz woke up long enough to mumble, "Are we home now?" Elena kissed her forehead. "Yeah, baby. We're home." The next morning the world woke up different. Politicians who'd spent years blocking funding for abuse survivors suddenly found their inboxes full of videos of ICE children melting into We Kept Walking. 3 emergency bills passed before New Year's. Haven houses became federally protected sites, untouchable even by budget cuts. Victor Orloff announced his retirement to Monaco and transferred ownership of half his legitimate companies to a survivor-led cooperative. Sasha was named CEO at 25. Elena and I flew to Washington for the signing ceremony of the Pierce Act, permanent annual funding for any child removed from a home valued over $5 million, because rich kids deserve rescue too. The president asked if I wanted to say a few words. I walked to the podium in jeans and the same boots I'd worn the night Elena negotiated with the Bratva and said exactly 9 words, "Love the children you have, not the ones you ordered." Then I dropped the mic, literally, and walked off while the room erupted. Elena high-fived me on the way out. We didn't go home right away. We took the red-eye to Los Angeles, rented a convertible, drove Pacific Coast Highway at dawn with the top down and the heat blasting because why not? Stopped at a random beach just as the sun came up, kicked off our shoes, walked into the surf fully clothed. Elena looked at me, 30 years old and still the fiercest thing I'd ever seen, and said, "You know the first time I understood what you did? I was 7 and some kid at school said my mom was famous for being sad. I told him my mom was famous for turning sad into an army." I laughed until I couldn't breathe. She splashed me. I splashed back. We ended up floating on our backs in the freezing Pacific, staring at a pink sky, 2 generations of women who refused to drown. "Think it's over?" she asked. "The fight?" "No," I said. "But the part where we're scared? That's done." She was quiet a long time. Then, "Good. Because I'm pregnant." I shot upright so fast I almost sank. "You're what?" She grinned the same crooked grin she'd had since she was 2. "Due in July. It's a girl. Already knows how to kick like she's breaking down doors." I started crying again, happy tears this time, salt on salt. "Name?" "Thomas for a middle name no matter what. First name is up to you." I didn't even have to think. "Hope," I said. "Hope Thomas Pierce Dash, last name we gave her when we adopted her at 14 because some kids choose their own families." Elena nodded once, fierce and satisfied. "Hope Thomas. Perfect." We floated until the sun was fully up and our fingers pruned. Then we drove back to LA, picked up Luz and Mateo and Aisha and Amir and Jaden and every kid who could get on a plane, flew them all to the island in Maine where the goats had multiplied and the swings still hung from the maple. We told them the news around a bonfire that night. They screamed so loud the stars shook. Jaden, now 23 and a lawyer, raised his beer and toasted, "To the woman who taught us freezing is optional." The fire cracked and popped and sent sparks into a sky finally cold enough for snow again, little flurries dancing like they'd been waiting for permission. Hope Thomas was born on the 4th of July under actual fireworks because of course she was. 10 pounds, lungs like a hurricane, eyes the exact gray of a Berkshire blizzard. Elena let me cut the cord. The first thing Hope did was grab my finger with a grip that said I already know the story and I'm ready to add my chapter. We brought her home to the island. Every Haven kid in the country showed up for the naming ceremony. They carried her down to the water in a cradleboard Sasha had carved from the last beam of the old Chicago house before we rebuilt. Victor sent a silver rattle engraved in Russian, "May your enemies hear this and run." Elena, the real Elena, 90 now and still refusing to act her age, held Hope up to the sky and declared in Spanish, "This child will never know a locked door." Then she looked straight at me and added, "And her grandmother will never stop opening them." That night I walked alone to the end of the dock. The water was black glass, stars reflected so perfect it felt like flying. I took off the locket I'd worn every day since I was 17, the one my grandmother gave me, opened it, slipped in a new picture, Hope asleep on my chest hours old, mouth open in tiny milk-drunk snores. I closed the clasp and hung it on the branch where the swing rope tied. Let the next girl who needs proof find it. Let her know the fire still burns. Behind me I heard soft footsteps. Elena, Sam, all the kids, 3 generations deep now, carrying candles like always. They formed a half circle and waited. I smiled, turned, opened my arms. They walked forward until the light became one continuous, one flame passing to the next, to the next, to the next. No one spoke. We didn't need to. The snow started falling again, soft, deliberate, like memory deciding to be gentle for once. Hope stirred in Elena's arms, blinked up at the flakes, and laughed, the first laugh of a child who will never know what it feels like to be left outside. I took her from my daughter, held her close, felt her tiny heart hammering against mine. And I whispered the only lullaby that matters: you are wanted. You are safe. You are fireproof. The girl in the snow looked at the woman she became, at the army she raised, at the great-granddaughter who would never learn how to freeze, and finally understood the night didn't end when Thomas carried me to the truck. It ended right now, under gentle snow and fierce love, 36 million keys and one open door at a time. The circle tightened. The candles burned brighter. And somewhere in the dark a child who hasn't been born yet started walking toward the light we'll never let go out. The snow kept falling, but no one was cold. Not anymore. Not ever again. Hope Thomas was 7 the day the final vault opened. Not the Beacon Street one, that had been emptied years ago, its walls now painted sky blue and turned into a free children's trauma clinic, but the one nobody knew existed until the letter came from a Liechtenstein law firm addressed to the heirs of Jonathan Pierce, living and yet unborn. Inside was a single coordinate burned into titanium plate, 46.9481 degrees north, 7.4400 degrees east, the exact center of Bern, Switzerland, plus a date, December 24, 2052. Hope's 7th birthday. We thought it was a hoax until the Swiss Federal Police called Elena directly and asked if she wanted an escort. Turns out the vault had been paying its rent in full every year since 1999 from an account that never ran dry. The bank had orders, open only on that date or upon proof of death of every Pierce descendant. We chose the date. Elena, Hope, Sam, and I flew private. Hope insisted on wearing a tiny black cape and snow boots even though Bern was having another warm winter. Sasha met us at the airport with 2 armored vans and Victor's old bodyguard who now worked for us and went by Uncle Dima. The bank was an unmarked granite building on Kramgas that looked older than time. The director, a nervous man with round glasses, led us down stairs that spiraled like a nautilus shell until the air tasted metallic. At the bottom stood a circular steel door the size of a subway car. No keypad. Just a single handprint scanner. Hope stepped forward before any of us could stop her, slapped her tiny palm on the plate, and the door rolled open with a sigh like it had been holding its breath for 54 years. Inside was one object, a cryochest the size of a coffin, temperature minus 196 degrees Celsius, frost crawling over the glass lid. A plaque read, "For Bella, from Jonathan. If you ever need to understand." The director handed me a remote. One button. I pressed it. The lid unsealed with a hiss of white vapor. Inside, suspended in liquid nitrogen mist, was a single red rose frozen mid-bloom and a hard drive encased in sapphire glass. Nothing else. No letter. No apology this time. Just the rose and the drive. Hope reached in without fear, tiny fingers immune to cold the way only children are, and lifted the rose. It didn't shatter. It was preserved perfectly, every petal sharp enough to cut. She looked up at me with those storm-gray eyes that skipped generations and said, "Grandpa tried to say sorry with a flower?" Elena snorted. Sam hid a laugh behind his hand. I took the hard drive. We carried both treasures upstairs into the pale Swiss sunlight. Back in Boston, we built a clean room in the basement of Haven House 1 because of course we did. Elena's paranoia genes are strong. Hope sat cross-legged on the floor in her cape while Sasha cracked the sapphire casing. Inside, one file, 8 zettabytes, labeled simulation. We thought it was another blackmail cache until it booted. Then every screen in the building went black and a single line appeared in my father's handwriting. I paid to map the future so you could change it. The screen filled with data, quantum simulation running from 1998 forward, branching at the exact second the mansion door slammed behind 10-year-old me. One branch, Arabella Pierce dies of hypothermia December 24, 1998. Jonathan Pierce Empire grows unchecked funds 3 wars launders money for cartels dies 2031 of overdose in Monaco no heirs. Second branch, Arabella survives exactly as history recorded, every variable tracked, every donation, every law, every child saved, every haven built, every life changed, rendered in perfect terrifying detail. The simulation predicted Haven Network would save 4.2 million children by 2075, prevent 31 school shootings, shift global policy on family wealth and abuse, collapse 7 trafficking rings, and, because my father apparently had a sense of humor, predict that Hope Thomas Pierce would become the first democratically elected world president in 2089 at age 36. The final frame was a photograph simulation generated of Hope at 70, gray-haired, still wearing the same red cape, standing on a stage with every nation's flag behind her, giving a speech titled "There Are No Throwaway Children." Underneath, my father's last words, time-stamped the day he died. I ran the numbers a billion times. The only variable that saved the world was you refusing to freeze. Thank you for proving monsters can make something better than themselves. The room was silent except for Hope crunching on a cookie she'd smuggled in. She looked up, chocolate on her face, and said, "So Grandpa was a nerd who time-traveled with math?" We all lost it. Laughing, crying, hugging in a pile on the floor while the simulation looped the image of 70-year-old President Hope. That night we flew home commercial because Hope wanted to see how normal people celebrate Christmas. We landed in Boston at 11 p.m. December 24, 2052. The city was warm again, but 30,000 people waited at Logan wearing white nightgowns over their coats holding electric candles. They'd come for the girl in the snow who never came back inside. Hope walked out of the jet bridge first, still in her cape, took one look, and yelled, "Hi friends. Follow me." She led the entire crowd on foot through the airport, out the doors, into the streets where another 100,000 waited. No one had organized it. It just happened. A river of light flowing toward Haven House. We walked 3 miles with them, Hope riding on Sam's shoulders, Elena live streaming, me holding the frozen rose that still hadn't wilted. When we reached the stone wall in Dorchester, now a public park with a permanent flame in the center, Hope climbed the little stage we kept there and held up the rose and shouted into the sudden quiet, "This is for every kid who got locked out. We're melting the last cold thing tonight." She dropped the rose into the flame. It flared crimson, then white, then blue, and instead of turning to ash it exploded into a million microscopic particles that rose like fireflies and hung in the air sparkling. People gasped. Phones up. The particles drifted higher, caught the wind, and started snowing red golden glitter that never touched the ground, just kept glowing, a permanent aurora over the city. Scientists still can't explain it. We don't try. Hope turned to me, eyes shining, and said, "Now the snow will never hurt anyone again." The crowd roared so loud it shook the stars. Somewhere in the chaos I felt arms around me from behind, looked down, and saw Elena's wrinkled hands. She was 97 and had walked the whole way with her cane. She whispered in my ear, Mija, your abuela is proud. Now go dance. And I did. We all did. 30,000 people in white nightgowns dancing under warm glitter snow that tasted like roses when it touched your tongue. Hope in the middle spinning until she fell dizzy and laughing. Sam lifting her high. Elena filming. Sasha crowd surfing. Victor's old bodyguard crying openly. The live stream hit 10 billion viewers before dawn. Comments in every language. I was cold and now I'm not. The girl in the snow became the woman who ended winter. At sunrise the glitter finally settled in a perfect circle around the flame. In the center the rose had become a single perfect diamond the size of a heart, clear with a red fire inside. Hope picked it up, walked straight to me, and said, "This one's yours, Nana." I took it. It was warm. I closed my fist around it and felt the last piece click into place. That night I hung the diamond on the maple at Haven Isles where the swing still hangs. It catches the sunrise and throws red across the water every morning like a promise. Hope starts college next fall, quantum sociology, obviously. She says she's going to map the future, only to make sure every kid gets born into one where the door is already open. She still wears the cape on special occasions. The world still tries to lock kids out sometimes. But every time it does, a million tiny keys show up in the mail, kids in nightgowns appear with candles, someone turns up the heat. The snow remembers what we did to it. It falls softer now. And somewhere a little girl who hasn't been born yet is already walking toward the light because Hope Thomas kept the promise her great-grandmother made barefoot in 1998. There are no more vaults left. No more secrets. No cold places we can't reach. The girl in the snow became the woman who melted winter, the daughter who turned fire into policy, the granddaughter who turned the last rose into dawn. And the great-granddaughter? She's still writing the story. But I know how it ends. It ends with every time a child who was told they were worthless looks up and sees glitter snow that tastes like hope and hears a voice across generations saying, "Keep walking, baby." The door is open. The fire is lit. And we saved you a spot by the warmth. Come home. Hope Thomas Pierce Dash, last name, was sworn in as the first democratically elected president of the United Earth Federation on January 1, 2089, age 36, wearing the same red cape now lined with white fur, the diamond rose hanging at her throat on a simple silver chain. The ceremony wasn't held in any capital city. It was held on Haven Isles, the swing still swaying behind the podium, the maple now 100 feet tall, roots visible above ground like veins of light. 7 billion people watched live as she placed her hand on a copy of my original viral essay The Girl in the Snow, bound in red leather and promised, in 147 languages at once thanks to real-time translation implants, that no child on the planet would ever again be left outside in any kind of storm. She signed her first executive order with a pen made from the melted brass of the last known locked door on Earth, a relic recovered from a demolished prison in Siberia. The order was one sentence: every dwelling with a child shall have a door that opens from the inside without key or code. Forever. I was 91, sitting in the front row on a heated cushion because my hips had opinions now, Sam beside me holding my hand the way he had since the night I came home with frostbitten toes and a heart that refused to quit. Elena, gray-haired and magnificent at 64, stood behind Hope as chief of staff. Sasha, CEO of the cooperative that owned half the world's shipping, wiped tears with a silk handkerchief embroidered with the old lantern logo. Real Elena had passed peacefully at 107 the year before, but her chair number 4 was empty with a single red rose on it, and everyone knew she was there anyway. Hope's speech lasted exactly 4 minutes and 30 seconds, the time it took the old security footage to show me pounding on glass before the door locked. She ended with my words, the ones I'd whispered to her in the delivery room: "You are wanted. You are safe. You are fireproof." The roar that followed registered 7.8 on the Richter scale in 6 countries. That night the sky did the glitter snow again, only this time it was global. Every continent, every climate zone, red gold particles drifting down warm as breath, tasting like roses and tamales and whatever comfort food your childhood needed. Scientists finally admitted they had no explanation. The people just called it the Mercy and danced in it until sunrise. I watched from the porch of the original cabin Thomas and Elena had built for me a lifetime ago, now preserved as a museum, except the porch swing had been replaced 20 times by children's hands. Sam had died peacefully the winter before at 93, asleep with his head in my lap while we watched the northern lights I'd ordered specially for our 70th anniversary. I still talk to him every day, the wind answered in his voice. Hope came and sat beside me after the inauguration parties died down, kicked off her presidential boots, put her bare feet, size 11, took after her grandfather, up on the railing. "Nana," she said, "the simulation updated itself today." I raised an eyebrow. "And?" "It says the probability of any child ever being intentionally locked out again just dropped to 0.0000003%. Rounded down it's 0. She leaned her head on my shoulder the same way Elena used to. "We did it." I laughed until I coughed. "Kid, you did it. I just refused to die in a nightgown." She grinned. "Same thing." We sat in silence watching the Mercy snow swirl. Somewhere below, the newest crop of Haven kids were having a midnight snowball fight with glitter that never melted. I could hear Luz, now Dr. Luz Morales, pediatric trauma surgeon, yelling at them not to eat the yellow glitter. "You gonna miss it?" Hope asked quietly. "The fight?" "No. Being needed." I thought about that. About the girl who once weighed 90 pounds soaking wet and carried the weight of every locked door in the world on her back. "I was needed for a long time," I said. "Now I get to be wanted." "That's better." She nodded, understanding more than her years. "I kept one thing from the vault," she said, pulling a tiny frozen petal from her pocket, the very center of the rose that somehow never thawed. "Figured you should have the last word." I took it. It was warm, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. I stood up, walked to the edge of the porch, and let the wind take it. The petal rose, caught the Mercy, became a spark, then a star, then joined the millions already burning. Somewhere a child who would never know my name looked up and felt, for the first time, completely safe. Hope slipped her arm through mine. "Walk with me, Nana?" I looked at the path lit by glowstones kids had placed every year on my birthday, leading from the cabin to the swing to the water and back again in an endless circle. "Always, baby." We walked slow, my cane tapping time with her boots, the Mercy snow falling upward now because physics had finally surrendered too. At the swing she stopped. "One last tradition," she said, and pushed me gently like Sam used to. I rose higher than I had any right to at 91, Cape. Hope had made me one too, midnight blue lined with stars, flapping behind me like wings. For a moment I was 10 again, barefoot, defiant, refusing to freeze. Then I was 28 holding newborn Elena. Then 50 watching my daughter burn Chicago brighter. Then 70 dancing under glitter that tasted like forgiveness. Then 91 knowing the story had outlived the storyteller and was still growing. I looked down at Hope, at the woman who carried my scars like medals and turned them into policy, and I laughed the laugh of a woman who beat winter itself. The swing slowed. Hope caught the chains, leaned in, kissed my forehead. Time to come inside, Nana. The kids saved you the corner by the fire. I looked at the cabin glowing gold, every window full of faces that had once been cold and were now light. In a minute, I said. Let me watch the snow go up a little longer. She smiled, kissed me again, and left me there. The mercy swirled around me, warm as the day Thomas wrapped me in his jacket, sweet as Elena's tamales, fierce as every child who ever learned to kick a door down from the inside. I closed my eyes and felt them all, Thomas, Elena real as Sam, my grandmother, even Jonathan somewhere beyond regret, watching the fire we made from his ashes. And I whispered into the upward falling snow the only truth that ever mattered. We kept walking. Every door is open now. The fire is lit in every language. The girl in the snow became the woman who melted winter, became the ancestor who taught the world how to burn warm. And the snow, sweet, impossible snow, rose forever carrying that message to every child still walking: you are wanted. You are safe. You are fireproof. Come home. I swung one last time, high enough to touch the stars, and let the mercy carry me the rest of the way. The girl in the snow finally came inside. And every light in the world stayed on for her. Forever. Please subscribe.